can start over if you need, or if you would like to move on to the next question, we can also do that as well.
Yeah, let's move on to the next question.
Alrighty. Okay, so we've heard a lot today about all the unique considerations and characteristics and the need for consideration of diversity and all the access needs and other factors that come into play in lived experience engagement. And so to get to the heart of this discussion today, really talking about the doing aspect, as I mentioned in the title, I would like to present our panelists with two questions. One, the first one being about success. So would you be able to share a success story or moment when engagement worked particularly well? And if you can share about what made it successful, that would be great. So that's the first question. And then the second question is about advice you would give to researchers. What advice would you give to folks who are just starting to engage with your community? And what would you like folks to know, so researchers to know? And so I'm going to just extend these two questions to the whole panel. Feel free to answer either of them or both of them if you wish. And just because we just put Kylie Jennifer on the spot just then, perhaps Christina Gray, would you like to kick us off? Yes, why not?
I think that an example of engagement working particularly well is when sometimes the conversations will get off topic, but that is often when the questions you didn't even know you need to ask are brought up, and it can sometimes reframe the work altogether. I think it's very important to let people just talk and discuss amongst each other. And just bounce ideas off each other. And then also, if I was going to give advice to a researcher, I would say to pick people from a very diverse background. I think the more people you have coming from different places in life, the more rich the information you're going to get will be.
Thank you, Christina. So flexibility and ability as a success factor, and then the diversity piece once again. Great. Would you like to add on to that?
I absolutely can. So when I think of a particular success story or moment that worked well, I actually have an example of a project that I've been working with for a while that I just feel like has done youth engagement well. And I like to think of the progress we've made with the Caribou Project. For some background context, I was a participant in the Caribou Pathway back many years ago when I was a teenager in the first edition. And so the Caribou Pathway is an integrated care pathway for youth experiencing depression, and now has a addition, I guess, of treating depression and anxiety. But when I was a participant, I felt that there were a lot of things that could be changed to better, reflect the experiences of young people. And this was something that the Caribou team was very open to. They had a very strong youth engagement plan already embedded within their project. Having young people consistently, provide feedback and shape the direction of the work that they were doing really felt like a good baseline. It felt like a good place to start. So this included contributing different ideas to help transition the pathway to different renditions, I guess. But looking at youth friendliness and different things like that. And although that is a success within itself, I would like to say the biggest success for me within that project has been seeing how strong the youth engagement structure has become and how this has been able to create an impact beyond our organization. Because that youth have been involved within the Caribou Project across many capacities, we've been able to maintain some of the best practices and key considerations that I mentioned earlier in my earlier presentation, but that's consistently helped make these practices adaptable and replicable outside of Camh. Over the past couple of years, we've started implementing a youth engagement model within community mental health sites across Ontario as a part of the Caribou Youth Engagement Study. And it's been really exciting to see these other communities taking on this work and making it their own. These practices that we help support is now being adapted to fit different local needs, which means even more young people are getting involved with where their voices need to be heard. This kind of momentum creates a really meaningful, full full circle impact. We can relay within each other and expand further. That means continuously evolving and continuing to learn from one another, which makes programs that we have at Camh and within other communities a lot stronger, which has been something that really means a lot to me. But with all of that being said, to take away from that, one piece of advice that I would give to researchers that are trying to engage with young people is that I would think of this as something that's long-term and collaborative, not just like a one-off consultation that can be considered sometimes tokenistic. You want to have young people involved as long as you can continuously through multiple steps of your project. And when young people are meaningfully involved through the project, they don't just I lost my train of thought. They don't just improve like the materials and whatnot, but they also help shape the work and make a long-term impact that can evolve and actually, reflect the needs of young people. With Camh specifically, the ongoing youth involvement showcased through the model with other community mental health sites across Ontario are now adapting to fit their own local needs, which is really nice to see. And that, in my slightly biased opinion, is very much key to the fact that youth have been involved continuously. And we're consistently valued and integrated throughout the project over time. And by creating a space for people, for young people to contribute in different meaningful ways, researchers are able to build programs and resources that are more relevant, sustainable, and ultimately more impactful for communities that they're meant to support.
Well put. Thank you, Gray. So a lot about integrating engagement early on, and then also the adaptability piece coming in, and intentionality piece as well. So thank you for that. Jennifer, would you like to go next?
Sure. For a success story, when engagement worked particularly well, I can speak with my own experience. When the Education Connector role was made available, I almost didn't apply because I was so nervous, but the research engagement staff encouraged me, and I was able to go to them and tell them I was nervous and reach out for support, which was a really big step in me putting myself forward for something that was new and kind of scary. They made sure I felt supported by providing the interview questions ahead of time so I could prepare. I thought about my answers and wrote them out and practiced them a few times. It was also helpful that the interview was not super formal but more relaxed, so I was able to feel more comfortable. And I was successful in getting the role, and this was possible because of how inclusive and accessible the engagement team were in meeting my needs. Education is actually really important to me, both educating non-disabled people about disability and making sure people with disabilities have access to education. Education is a passion of mine because I see it as a way of making the world a more accessible place. I hope that the people I educate will consider people with intellectual and developmental disabilities more in the foreground when they're trying to do projects, rather than bringing us in as an afterthought. And to continue on to the next question about what advice I would give to people just starting to engage with the community, as I just mentioned, engage people with intellectual and developmental disabilities from the very beginning. So when you're planning projects, it's important that you're researching questions and problems that actual people with IDD find to be most relevant to our lives. When you meet with us, it's important to meet at an accessible time and have a hybrid option available when possible for in-person events. And this makes sure people aren't excluded based on geography or ability to travel. I would also say make sure you're explaining any scientific terms you might use, and generally try to speak and have any slides you might use in plain language, but do presume competence and our willingness and ability to learn. We want to and can be engaged in all kinds of research in all aspects if you work with us in an accessible way. And if you think about it, it's kind of your job to do your best at understanding the population you're working with and what our access needs are. Please feel free to ask us what these access needs are to make it easier for us to communicate them. But don't be afraid to ask us, because the more we understand each other, the more we can do inclusive research together. And finally, the last thing I would say is make sure you're compensating us fairly for our time. It's frustrating to see flyers for projects where there's a significant time commitment expected, but it doesn't appear that there's any compensation involved. I would just say that we can't be expected to work for free.
Yes, you're absolutely right about that.
That's my friend
But
right
the
there.
yes.
I was gonna say hashtag what she said.
No, we're part of her team, and yes, we are compensated quite well.
Yeah.
Our team has done an amazing. Our staff of our department have done an amazing job. They've given us a salary of $20 an hour, which I think is quite impressive. And they found a way, which is clever, to not burn us out, which they break it down into 90-minute chunks.
Yep.
So I would call that quite impressive.
And we have a fearless leader, Hannah. Yeah.
And we have Natasha. And we have a wonderful occupational therapist, Armin Aitsu. I'm sorry if I'm speaking up. Give it the continue.
Sorry.
I was gonna say, if we can just get the elderly folks the flowers, just a round of applause. Thank you, Jennifer. To close us off, Kylie, would you like to lead us home before we do open questions?
That sounds good. I just want to say that amazing words there. I mean, I do respect everybody in this room who has a passion. My success story, I have been at Camh for 5 years, came in as a patient, had no voice, I thought, got all the way to patient advisory co-chair, I'm on the Quality Excellence Council, and then I got to this research point where I started doing research on the HOPE app, using it in the ED, but I will correct that lingo and tell everybody it's the emergency department. And we tested to see how valuable the HOPE app could be used as like a mobile device on your phone. And it's gotten to the point where I had an abstract in this in Research Engagement Day last year, and now I am part of the planning committee, so that is a part of my success. And also being empowered to be a co-author, getting co-authorship on a published like protocol or scope review or something that is so meaningful, and you realize you did something to be a part of that paper. And I think that the other biggest thing is having an open conversation from the beginning of research time, making sure everybody has expectations met on both sides, making sure accommodations are met, or oh my goodness, I'm so bad at that. Accessible needs, I'm trying to remember this new word because I'm kind of like it. And just making sure that like those connections are established and they remain. Working with good researchers can lead to years of, as people spoke today about like how you get involved, and it's this time of your life you're putting into it. And knowing that now I work with the researcher Danielle Shin, and she was here doing her doctorate, and now she's in the States, and I'm still able to work with her. And it's so meaningful because like not using my hands, and she'll take time for virtual meetings, and we can discuss all our feedback, and she's empowered me to get more involved with research and understand more of the barriers, especially with patients and families and other accessible needs. And I think it's important to highlight, the more you do, the more empowerment you have, and if you build that relationship from the beginning and kind of see what both sides want, I think that's the best way, and just being open about